Our objectives in R.2 are to do operations with real numbers, starting with adding real numbers. So let's take a look at one way to view adding real numbers. Let's suppose we're taking the number 6, and we're going to add to that a negative 8. One way to do that is to look at it like a number line and to kind of just draw out a number line and see what that looks like in terms of traveling along that number line. We can start at 6. So if that's 6, then that'll be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Here's 0. And then of course these are negative numbers, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and so on, right? And what this says is from 6 we're going to add a negative 8. We're going to go in this direction 8 times. Another way of looking at this, another way of writing that would be 6 minus 8, right? These say the same thing, and it's very important to understand a statement like this, subtraction, to mean the adding of the opposite. These are very important concepts to understand. I'd like to be able to articulate them later. But anyway, it says let's go from 0, and then first let's go from 0 to 6 in the positive direction because that's a positive 6. No sign in front of it means that it's a positive 6. So we'll start here and we'll go 6 and we end up here, or we can just say let's start at 6. From 6 now we're going to travel in this direction 8 times. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we'll end up there at a negative 2. So a positive 6 plus a negative 8 gives you a negative 2. But let's look at that a different way. Let's say that my pluses are each a 1, and a plus means positive. So in order to represent this number here, I need 6 pluses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I want to add to that. Negative 8. So I'm going to represent a negative with this minus sign here. And I'm going to add 8 of those minus signs here. Negative 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now what happens? Let's see how this works. Because of a very special relationship called the additive inverse. And let's talk about that for just a second. In order to understand the additive inverse, we need to understand the additive identity. And the additive identity is 0, right? Basically, what that means is any number in the world plus 0 is that number. If I add 0 to 5, I still have 5. If I add 0 to negative 5, I still have negative 5. Now this implies that if I take a number and I subtract that number, or if I remember subtraction is adding the opposite, if I do either of those tasks, a number minus itself or a number plus its opposite is 0. So here we have a number and its opposite. So that's 0, that's a 0, that's a 0, that's a 0, that's a 0. We have here what's called a 0 field. And these numbers cancel out. They go away. That plus 6 and that minus 6 go away. And what am I left with? I'm left with a negative 2. So a positive 6 minus 8 gives me a negative 2. Let's try another one. Let's try something a little more simple. Let's say I have this number here, and that's going to be a positive 3. And let's just say I want to add 4 to I want to add 4 to it. So 3 plus 4. So I can look here and use my number line and say I can start on 3 and go 4 more in that direction, or I can just look at my pluses here and I see a positive 3, 1, 2, 3, and I add 4 more, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3 plus 4 is 7. What if I did a positive 3 now? Let's try a different one. Let's try a positive 3 again. And now we're going to subtract 4. Or another way of saying that is plus a negative 4. So I'll add a negative there, and let's do it in a different color even. Let's say that'll be plus a negative 4. Okay. Well, I do a 1 negative there, 2 negatives there, 3 negatives there, and 1 negative there. Clearly these three cancel each other out, and I'm left with what? A negative 1. That's interesting. What would happen if instead of having a positive 3 and a negative 4, what would happen if I had a positive 4 and from that I'm going to add a negative 3? What happens in that case? Well, let's start with our positive 4 first. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we'll add our negative 3, 1, 2, 3. Clearly these three cancel each other out, and I'm left with a 1. Well, let's take a look at what this means. Let's see if we can't come up with a rule based on this idea here. What's happening here? In the first case, 3 was a positive number, and 4 was our negative number. So here our negative number is bigger, has a bigger absolute value than our positive number. So notice that when we had our negative number, when we had more negatives than we did positives, our answer turned out to be negative. And so here in the next one, where our bigger number was positive and our smaller number was negative, basically we had more positives than we did negatives, our number turned out to be positive. Now I'm going to let you describe your rule for adding and subtracting real numbers, integers, whatever. But basically how you describe your rule should be able to tell you that if I have negative 16 plus a negative 8, or another way of writing that would be negative 16 minus 8, what would that be? Notice up here I had two positive numbers, and the result, the sum, was positive. Here I have two different signs, and our result changed based on which one had the bigger absolute value. Now here, let's write this out. I have 16 negatives, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then I'm going to add 8 more negatives, or I'm going to subtract 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so now what I've got is 24 negatives here. So really all that happened was my number got even more negative. So when the signs are the same, what happens? The signs are both positive here, my answer is positive. The signs are both negative here, my answer is negative. Here the signs are different. And what does the positive or negative depend on? You tell me. There's one more thing I want to do, and that's show you what happens when we are doing, let's say, 5 minus a negative 3. What happens in that case? Well, let's try this. Here is our 5. There's our 5. and I'm going to add a field of 0, right? Just an arbitrary number of zeros. I just put 5 just for the fun of it. And I did that so we can see what happens when we take away a negative. So this is 5 plus 0. And remember, any number plus 0 is that number. So this whole thing right here, this entire box, everything in here represents my 5. Now what happens when I take away 3? Not take away 3, take away a negative 3. So taking away is different from adding. I mean, up here we're saying that taking away is mostly adding, and yeah, that's true, but let's try to take away a negative 3. So here's taking away a negative 3. There's one negative I'm taking away. There's two negatives I'm taking away. And there's three negatives I'm taking away. So now what I've got is 5, my original 5, minus the negative 3, so I have 3 more positives there. So I have now a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 0, or I have 8. 5 minus a negative 3 is 8. Huh, that's interesting. When I minus a negative, my number got bigger. That's because when I do minus a negative, that's the same thing as doing plus. So 5 minus a negative 3 is equal to 5 plus 3, which is simply 8. That took a little bit more time than I anticipated doing adding and subtracting integers, but I hope you were able to get the gist of it. In the next video, we'll go ahead and do multiplying. Let's see, what did we talk about? So we talked about adding real numbers. We talked a little bit about subtracting real numbers because, one, you can think of subtracting as adding the opposite, right? So, well, that's what even this is, right? 5 minus a negative 3 is adding the opposite of a negative 3. So 5 basically plus a positive 3. All of that means the same thing. So we've talked about adding real numbers, subtracting real numbers, and finding the opposite or the additive inverse using our identity. Our additive inverse is basically the opposite. So for any number, the additive inverse is the opposite of that number. Whatever will give me 0 if I add them together. Remember, 0 is the additive identity. Okay, what I would like for you to do is I would like for you, in your own words, to write up a rule or a method for adding numbers. Adding numbers with the same sign, adding numbers with opposite signs. What will your answer be? What happens when I add two positive numbers? What happens when I add two negative numbers? What happens when I add a positive and a negative number? How do I decide whether that number is positive or negative? What happens when I subtract negative numbers? Come up with your own rules and write those rules in the comments below, and we can talk about them in class. In the next video, we're going to look at multiplying and dividing real numbers.